We continue now at the top of Daf Peites and Aleph in Meseches Zevachim. This is Zevachim Daf 89a. This is the beginning of the 10th parak of Meseches Zevachim. The Mishnah says, Kol hatadir mechaveiro, anything that's more frequent than something else, that takes precedence. As the Mishnah now continues and explains, Hatmidin, the carbon tamid, which is brought every day, Kodmin lemusafin, that comes before carbon musaf, Musvei Shabbos, Kodmin lemusvei Rosh Chodesh, the musaf offerings that are brought on Shabbos, those come before the musaf of Rosh Chodesh, and Musvei Rosh Chodesh, Kodmin lemusvei Rosh Hashanah, the musaf offerings of Rosh Chodesh, they come before Rosh Hashanah. Shenemar, as it says in the pasuk, Milvad olas haboker asher laolas hatomid tasu esela, besides for the olas haboker, and that pasuk indicates that comes first because it's more frequent. Rashi explains, Kol hatadir Shabbos tadira me Rosh Chodesh. Shabbos is more frequent than Rosh Chodesh, v'chein kulam, and that's true of all of the cases in the Mishnah. And again, it's learned from the pasuk Milvad olas haboker. Rashi says Milvad olas haboker ha'asuya kvar mashma. The pasuk sounds like it's saying that the olas haboker was already brought, and then these other karbonos are going to be brought. This is talking about the karbonos of Pesach. Alma tamidin kadmi lemusaf, and you see that the carbon tamid, they come before the carbon musaf. And the Gemara says, Minolan, from where do we know this? And the Gemara says, what do you mean, Minolan, from where do we know it? Kedukam Artaima, the Mishnah itself said the reason we brought a pasuk. Milvado las haboker. It said Milvado las haboker is the source for this idea. And the Gemara says, well, Dilma, maybe Tamidin Hain de Kadmu Musafin, maybe the carbon tamids, they come before a Musaf offering, Mishum de Tadiri, because they're more frequent. But Musafin Lemusafin Minolan, how do we know that you apply the same rule by carbon Musaf in general, that let's say the Musvei Shabbos come before the Musvei Rosh Chodesh, etc.? How do we know that? And the Gemara says, Amar Rabbi Law says, the Amar Krotz, because the pasuk then goes on to say, this pasuk of Milvad Olas HaBoker Asher Lo Olas HaTamid Tasu Esela, it then says, Ko'ele Tasu Layom Shivas Yom. It says, like this you're going to do for 7 days. The simple explanation of the pasuk is the same karbonos that are brought on the first day of Pesach are brought on the subsequent days, but we understand Eila Ko'ela, these are like these, and so therefore we learn from that again that this is true by Musaf as well. We follow the same rule. But the Gemara says, V'haimi boy leila gufe, but isn't the pasuk of Ka'ela, it's needed for what it itself is teaching. It's teaching that the karbonos are the same every single day. The Gemara says to that, Imkei, no, if that's all it was teaching, Nichtov Eila Tasu Layom. It could just say Eila Tasu Layom, the chaf is extra. But the Gemara said not necessarily, because Ichasav Eila Tasu Layom Shivas Hayomim, if it said do this every day for 7 days, Hava Amina Eila L'Shivas Hayomim, maybe it means these karbonos that were just listed, they should be divided over the 7 days. But the Gemara says to that, Liyom Ksiv, it says the word Liyom, and so therefore the word Layom indicates that we're talking about the karbonos again being brought, these karbonos being brought on each day. But the Gemara still asks, Vakati, but still, Ema Eila Layom, let's say that this is for the day, Avol Shar Yom Lo Yadana Kama, but maybe the other days I don't know exactly how many karbonos to bring. These are the karbonos of the first day, but I'm not sure about the subsequent days. And so the Gemara then says, Amar Kratz, it's because the pasuk says Tasu. The pasuk already says Tasu, Sheyu Kol Ha'asuyos Shavos, that everything you're doing each day of Pesach should be the same set of karbonos. That's how we know that. And so again, Ka'ela now is free to teach us this halacha, that even when it comes to Musafin, we apply this rule of whatever is more frequent, that comes first. And Rashi explains, Mishum de Tadiri, the Tamid is Tadir, and therefore we understand that goes before Musaf, but who says that you apply that to Musafin in general? The Tamid B'chol Yom, the point is the carbon tamid, that's brought every day. Hilka chashiv tadir sadidei, therefore the fact that it's frequent, that's already more chashiv, it's the reason why it should go first. Maybe we would not apply that to various kinds of musafin. And the Gemara then said, Ko'ela tasu, it says the pasuk Ko'ela, Basar hahu krod milvado las haboker tasu esela, after this pasuk of besides the ola, you're going to do these offerings, ksiv Ko'ela tasu, then it says, Ko'ela tasu, mashma keseder shamarti loch Ko'ela shalmalo, keshem shahatadir kodem, Kach Seder HaMusafin, just like we just said, we're going to apply that by Musafin as well. Shem Yom Sheyesh Beis Musafin, if you have a day with 2 Musafin, Kagon B'Shabbos Shabbos Charegel, for example. Let's say Shabbos would fall out on the holiday. Here the pasuk is talking about the holiday. So what if Shabbos falls out during the holiday, which it does? So Yehei Hatadir Kodem, so then whatever's more frequent, meaning Shabbos, that should take precedence. The Gemara then asks, Lagufe, isn't the pasuk of Ka'ela needed for itself? Lahatin Musaf Lazayin Hayamim, to say that you have to bring this carbon Musaf all 7 days of Pesach. The Mikra Kama Yom Rishon Hu Denafkalan, the first pasuk's only the first day. Ikos of Eila, then the Gemara said, if it said Eila, Lashon Kushu, this is part of the question. Eila L'Shivas Hayamim, I would have said Eila L'Shivas Hayamim, meaning Osan Shiva Kavasim Hu Amurin Be'inyan. One might have thought that the 7 Kavasim which are mentioned, Yischalko L'Shivas Hayamim, maybe you don't bring them all every day, maybe you divide them among the 7 days. But then the Gemara said, Eila Layom, it says Eila Layom, these for the day, but that might mean Liyom Rishon, that might mean just for the first day. Then it says 7 days, you don't know exactly how much. And maybe that's what Ka'ela is for. That way you're going to say that Tasu Layom again is going on the other days. And so then the Gemara ultimately said that Tasu Layom, that part of the pasuk that teaches us that all of the asiyos are shavos, that every day is the same. And so again, Ka'ela is available for this drasha. Ka'ela teaches us that by the Musafin as well, we apply the rule of whatever is more frequent is going to take precedence. And the Gemara continues with another approach. Abaye says, Migufe dekra, you actually can learn it from the pasuk itself. Rashi explains, Migufe dekra de milvado las haboker. From that pasuk of milvado las haboker, we can learn Shaminon de Musafin tedirin yiktamu. We can learn out that by Musafin as well, whatever is more frequent takes precedence. Because in Cain, if so, otherwise, leimakra milvado olas haboker, it could just say milvado olas haboker. V'tishtok and then be silent. It doesn't need to say anything further. Asher laolas hatamid. Lamali, why does it say the phrase Asher laolas hatamid? Lameimar dehach de tedira tiktom. It's to say a general rule, whatever is more frequent takes precedence. Rashi explains Asher laolas hatamid. Lamali pshita de olas haboker olas hatamid. We already know that the olas haboker is olas hatamid. Elatalach tam haktomasa. The pasuk here is telling us the reasoning why it takes precedence. Betediros, the reason is because it's more frequent, and that's kidei shetilmod l'shar tedirin, that we should learn by other things that are more frequent, sheyakdimu, that they should take precedence. Demishum hi gufa lamali lefrushay taima, because if it was just talking about the case of the Talmud, you wouldn't need to explain the reason. The reason why the pasuk is giving us the reason is to apply it to these other cases, to the Musafin as well. And the Gemara continues with the Mishnah, Kol ha-mekudash mechaveru, anything that is holier than something else, that's more sanctified, kodem es chaveru, that takes precedence over that other carbon or that other part of the carbon. And the Mishnah continues and explains, dam ha-chatas, for example, the applications of the blood of a carbon chatas, kodem la-dam ha-ola, that takes precedence over the applications of the blood of the ola, mivnei shu meratza, because the dam ha-chatas is meratza, meaning to say that is a kapara, that's an atonement for chayve krisos, and therefore that takes precedence over the application of the dam of the ola. But on the other hand, a vare ola, the limbs of the ola is entirely burned, so those limbs are burned, that takes precedence, kodmin la'emure chatas, that takes precedence to the sacrificial portions, those parts of the chatas which are burned on the mizbeach, and the reason for that is mimneshu kalalishim, because again the ola is entirely burned on the fire. And the Mishnah continues, chatas kodemes la'asham, a carbon chatas takes precedence to a carbon asham, mimnei shadama nitan l'dalid karnos, because there the blood is applied to all 4 corners of the mizbeach, as opposed to the asham where it's 2 opposite corners, it goes on 4 walls, but it's just 2 corners. And also ala yesod, also when it comes to the chatas, the pasuk says that the blood is poured to the yesod of the mizbeach by asham, that's the halach as well, but it doesn't say that explicitly in the pasuk. And the Mishnah continues, asham kodem l'toda ve'el nazir, and asham takes precedence over the toda and the ram of the nazir, mipnei shu kadshe kachim, because the carbon asham is kadshe kachim, that's one of the karbanos of a higher level of holiness. And toda ve'el nazir, the toda and the ram of the nazir, kodmim l'shlamim, they take precedence over the shlamim, mipnei shehein nechalin l'yom echad, because they are eaten for 1 day, u'tu'unin lechem, and they also require bread that goes along with them, and that's not true by the shlamim. So again, the toda and the ram of the nazir take precedence to the shlamim. And hashlamim kodmin lebechor, the carbon shlamim takes precedence over the bechor, mimnei shein tu'unin matan daled, because they have the four four walls of the Mizbeach application. That's not true by Bechor. And also Smicha, Unesachim, Utenufos, Chazav Eshok. They also have Smicha, you have to lean upon the animal. Nesachim refers to the libations. Really, it's the mincha and the libations that accompany the carbon. And Tenufos, Chazav Eshok, that's the waving of the breast and the thigh. And HaBechor, Kodem LaMaiser, the Bechor, that takes precedence to Maiser Behema, Mivnei Shekdushaso Meirechem, because that already has holiness from the moment it's born, from the womb. And also V'nechol HaKohanim, when it comes to Bechor, that's eaten by Kohanim. Maiser can be eaten by anyone, the Maiser Behema. HaMaiser Kodem LaOfos, Maiser Behema takes precedence over the bird karbanos, Mivnei Shu Zevach, because that is a slaughtered, as opposed to birds where Malika is done. Here it happens through slaughtering, and therefore that takes precedence. And also V'yesh Bo Kodesh Kadashim, there is Kodesh Kadashim. Now when the Mishnah uses the term Kodesh Kadashim here, it's not referring to the category of karbanos, but it's the parts of the carbon that go on the Mizbeach. So it's saying that V'yesh Bo Kodesh Kadashim, Damo Ve'emurav. When it comes to the Meiser Behema, when it comes to the Zevach, so the blood and the sacrificial portions are burned on the Mizbeach. It has those elements of Kodesh Kadashim. And Ha'ofos Kodmin LeMenachos, Ofos, bird karbanos, that comes before Menachos, Mibnei Shehein Mine Damim, because those are types of blood, that involves blood, and Mincha obviously does not. Minchas Chote Kodem LeMinchas Nedava, the Mincha of a sinner comes before the Mincha that's donated, Mibnei Shu Ba'al Chet, because that's coming for a sin. And Chatas Ha'of Kodemes La'ola Sa'of, the Chatas Ha'of, the bird Chatas takes precedence over the bird Ola, V'chein Behekdeshin, the same is true in terms of consecrating. Let's say somebody has to bring both, so the Chatas Ha'of should be consecrated first. And Rashi explains, Kol HaMekudash Mechaveru, anything that has more sanctity, Sheyesh Bo Tzad Riboy Kedusha Mimeno, meaning in some way it has more sanctity. Dam Chatas Kodem LaDam Ola, the application of the blood of a Chatas comes before the blood of an Ola, meaning Im Shneihan Shechut, and let's say both have been slaughtered, V'yomnim Lizarik, and they're ready to be thrown, the blood is ready to be thrown, the blood of the Chatas comes first. Shehu Meratzim Mechaper Al Chayve Krisos, that's a kapor, it's an atonement for Chayve Krisos. Hatzorech Ritzoi Gadol, if you're talking about Krisos, so that needs a great Ritzoi, it needs a great acceptance, so that comes first. A Vore Ola Kodem B'Haktaras, on the burning of the limbs of the Ola, that comes first. La'imure Chatas, to the sacrificial portions, the portions that are burned of the Chatas, meaning Im Nizraku D'mei Shnei, and let's say the blood of both of them were thrown, and now it's a question of what goes up on the Mizbeach first. Memneshu Kula Kala, because it's entirely burned the Ola. V'tzad Ribay Kedusha, who is Zel Mizbeach. So again, that's an increase of Kedusha in terms of the Mizbeach for that. Al Dalet Karnos, and then it says, when it comes to the Chatos, that takes precedence over the Asham, because the blood is on all four corners. The Asham, whereas with regards to the Asham, Beis Matana Shein Dalet, it's two Matanas, two applications of blood on two opposite corners of the Mizbeach. It goes on four walls, but it's just two corners. V'lo ala Kronos, again, it's not on the four corners. V'al HaYesod, and also when it comes to Chatas, you pour the remainder to the base of the Mizbeach. Shvichas Shirayim, the pouring of the remainder. Uva'asham lo matzinu shenemru, we don't find by the Asham that's stated in the pasuk, even though that is the halacha, but it's not explicit in the pasuk. Matan Arba, and then the Mishnah said that when that when it comes to the Shlamim come before Bechor because it's Matan Dalid. That doesn't mean four corners. It means Beis Matano Shein Dalid. It means two applications of blood that are on four walls of the Mizbeach. Uvechor Eino Ela Matana Achas. By Bechor, it's just one application of blood. Also Ve'eno Ton Smicho Nesachim. There's no requirement of Smicha and Nesachim. Kedamrinim b'Menachos b'Perek Shtei Midos Kol HaKarbanos, like we say in Menachos. Mivnei Shu Min Zevach. And then the Mishnah said that when it comes to a Min Zevach, meaning Meiser Behema is an animal, it's slaughtered, that's before Ophos, meaning Zvichas Sakin. If it's slaughtered with a knife, that gives it precedence. V'yof b'Malika, and Of is done with Malika, with pinching the neck. Uzevachim Chashivi, and when it comes to the slaughtered karbanos, those are more important. Mimnei Shemitzvasan Meruba, Shekol HaKarbanos Boin Mehen, because that's more common. The mitzvah of slaughtering is by all karbanos, therefore we see that is considered more chashuv. V'yeshbo kachei kachim, and then the Mishnah said that in addition, when it comes to meiser before ophos, that's because it has kodesh kadashim or kachei kachim by the blood and the sacrificial portions. L'cheilak gavoa beis devar, and the point of the Mishnah is there are two things that go to the Almighty: damo ve'emurav. When it comes to the meiser behema, again it's both the blood and also the sacrificial portions. They are going to go on the mizbeach. Masha'en ken bechatas of. Now that's not true by chatas of. She'en lemizbeach eladam. dam. All that the Mizbeach gets is the blood by the Chatas Of. So what the Mishnah means to say is that again, the Yeshbo Kodesh Kadashim by Damo and a Murav, as opposed to the bird karbanos where it's just going to be the dam. Again, Ela Dama. V'kevan Dekinma L'Chatas Of. Now, once it takes precedence over the Chatas Of, Kol Shekain L'Olas Of. It certainly takes precedence to the Olas Of. The Chatas Of Kodemis L'Olas Of. Kedekatani Vazil. Chatas Of itself takes precedence to the Olas Of, as the Mishnah will say. Shehein Mine Damim. Then the bird karbanos take precedence to the Mincha because the bird karbanos involve blood. Kaparas and Meruba. That's a great amount of atonement that we find by blood. Shehu Ba Al Chet. And then it said that Minchas Chote comes first because that comes before a Minchas Nedava, because the Minchas Chote is Ba Al Chet, it's for sin. V'hainu Kedushaso de Mechaperes. Again, that shows holiness because it's an atonement. And Chatas Ha'of Kodemes La'olas Ha'of. The Chatas Ha'of goes before the Olas Ha'of. That is Mikroi Nafkalon Begemara. That's learned from Sukkim in the Gemara. V'chein Behekdesha. Now that's also true by consecrating, meaning Keshu Mefarish Eskino, when he's again designating he has two birds, and one is going to be a Chatas Ha'of, one's going to be an Olas Ha'of. So then he says, Korei Shem L'Chatas Tchila. He says that the one that's going to be a Chatas, that one he pronounces first as a Chatas, and then he consecrates the one that is going to be an Ola. And we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Peites Amid Beis.